Greetings, this is King Mike. I want to holler at you. Just because you're pro black, that doesn't give you an excuse to be ignorant. Learn your shit before you criticize. You got to get facts, get facts. Now, on ancient history, there's no way you can really get a fact. You can only get theories and opinions. Let me offer you mine. The concept of slavery does not begin with white people, with Europeans. It doesn't. To tell you the truth, what you experienced, or what our ancestors experienced, had nothing or little to do with actual slavery, servitude. First thing you have to do is stop acknowledging that you were a slave. You were not a slave, you were a hostage. Slaves were never kept in chains. Slaves didn't live in barns with animals. Slaves wasn't treated like cattle. They weren't. If you studied ancient history, you'd know that. Slaves was a representation of the master and the master's house. Meaning if the master wore silk, his slave wore silk too when he was out and about with the master. If the master's children went to a prestigious school, the slave's children went to the same school. Slaves were educated men and women. Slaves were either, let me see, you could buy your freedom as a slave. Now, how was that possible in your mindset? So you have to understand, white people, whatever they touch, they pervert, contaminate, and destroy. You understand? How did they even begin to have the conscience of being a slave master? I'll tell you how. When the Egyptians would travel, they would bring gifts. 4,000 oxen, 5,000 camels, 5,000 pieces of gold, 4,000 pieces of silver, 400 slaves. And once the Egyptians left, the slaves were there just as loyal. And the white kings, the white people, couldn't understand how these people were still like that. But they didn't understand they were loyal to the king or loyal to the pharaoh. You know how good you got to treat a motherfucker to be loyal even after you're gone? You don't whip, beat, punish, rip people's arms off, and rape. You never had to do that. Do your ancient history. Figure it out. A slave came in many forms. Let's take it, a traveler didn't have much money. He was going from one point to the next. Okay, he out of cheese. I'll work with you for a few months or a year. And after that, pay me and I'm gone. But you never heard of such things here in America. They even fought a war over free labor. Now, how is that possible that you a slave but you get paid? A lot of you guys have been watching too many movies and reading too many books written by people who have no clue of what went on in ancient times. Some books will tell you. Even some movies will tell you that slaves got paid. Remember the gladiators that fought to the death? They got paid. And they couldn't go nowhere. Some of them were criminals. Some of them wanted to be there. Only in America do people get treated awful. Only when white people came along. Back in ancient times, matter of fact, if you look up King Tut, you know they pulled 4,000 slaves out of the grave. How loyal do you have to be to walk in there and sit patiently knowing that you ain't going to never get out? You want to go with King Tut. Yeah, I was a little kid. You know how dedicated, how much love you got to have for the Pharaoh to go in somewhere and die with him? How many of your ancestors you think would die for the white man? He gone, put me in the hole right with him. You saw those mummies. If you do your research, you will see they were mummies. You think they held them people with a spear, like they don't move or I'll kill you. You think you about to kill me anyway? I'm getting the fuck out of here. No, they were happy to go in there with him. So imagine the treatment that they must have had. So what makes a slave? Somebody who probably couldn't function. Some people don't do well with responsibility, but they do okay if somebody else mapped that shit out. That person don't mind being a slave. Now remember, it wasn't derogatory until it got here, and white people start belittling black people or their slaves, mistreating them. You understand what I'm saying? Being a slave was better than being a beggar. Go look throughout history and tell me where the slaves slept in the barn. They slept in slave quarters. You even have stories in the Bible where some slaves grew up to become kings. How is this possible? How do you become a king without being an educated man? Or being a king without being taught how to fight in somebody's army? Some slaves have led armies. So before you go knocking the concept of slavery, understand what that is. We here in America was never slaves. We were hostages. You don't kidnap slaves. You don't keep them in chains because the slave wasn't trying to run away. We were never slaves. We were victims. Stop asking for slavery reparations. You ask for your real reparations. And they don't stop at being kidnapped and being taken as a hostage. So yes, our ancestors were hostages. We need reparations for that. The children of the ancestors were miseducated. We need reparations for that. To this day, they're still miseducating us. They got to pay. Being brutalized by police, slave catchers, white people, we need reparations for that. We're being brutalized to this day. Being discriminated against. Ever since we were so-called set free, we've been discriminated against. We need reparations for that. They've intentionally created ghettos to place us in. We need reparations for that. Being that I've done construction, I know it cost about, now in 2020, it might cost $10,000 to build one house. You look at the labor of the guys that work there, the material, build a house, probably at the most $10,000. When you look at a tract home, it probably take a framer 1 week to frame 5 houses. Then you got your plumbers and your electricians come in and do all that, and the plumbers come in there before the framers. They lay the groundwork for your toilets and all the pipes and all that to go out to the street. Then the concrete guys come in and lay the slab over that. Then the framers frame, and then the plumbers come back and open their stuff up and start running pipe up the inside of what's going to be the walls. Same with the electricians, the air conditioning people. And then the drywallers come in and put the walls up. And then the electricians come back and put the lights and all that's going to be in there and run all the wires to your on and off switches. And then the finished people come in, put in the wallpaper or the paint in the cabinets. And the finished plumbers come in installing toilets and sinks, showers, tubs and jacuzzis. The roofers come in. Then your landscapers come in, do the grass and all that. And you got a house. That house, if they want to do one house, you can have that shit done in about a month if you had the money. But that ain't the way construction workers work. Not here in America. They milk shit. They milk it. You'll be seeing a construction worker work and drag shit on because they get paid by the hour. Now, if that was somebody with his own business out there working. He hustling. He knocks shit out. But I say that to say a house will cost you what, 600,000, 100,000. But in order to make a house, nothing. In the '90s, it was like about 2,500 to make a house. So I just put inflation on there and just put it up to 10 grand. But it's probably cheaper than that. But my point is, now seeing that they can make a house for that less of money, why did they make projects when you could have just made a house for people to live in? They intentionally make themselves 5, 6 bedroom homes, jacuzzis and pools, and then went and made a ghetto on purpose and funneled people in there. Took the fathers out of homes, and then hunted the kids, the men down like dogs, and the miseducated and try and put guns and drugs in the hands of the young boys, and tried to make prostitutes out of the young daughters and and women. We need reparations for that. So get slavery out of your mind and look at reality. You weren't a slave, you were hostages, and you were victims. Your average racist white person, if you don't like it, get out. Nigga, not without my check. My people built this motherfucker. It is payday. You understand? Wasn't a slave. You don't treat slaves indignant like that. We were hostages, prisoners, who committed no crime. Go to jail. If you ever been to jail, see how them motherfucking correctional officers, the white boys, treat you. They love that shit. They take jobs there on purpose, just to know what slave owners felt like, plantation owners felt like. The people in Africa knew what they were doing to Africans. They wouldn't have sold any Africans. That's the reason why they stopped. The word got back to the treatment of the people that they sold. White folks got to kidnapping niggas, colonizing over here. You see how they do. So no, this wasn't slavery. Do your research. They done made slavery into a bad word. The same with Negro or Negus or Negro, which means black, all of it. But when a white person come over here and conquer you or steal you, and you're supposed to be the Negus, the king of all kings, second only to God, picking his cotton, they laugh and belittling you. Pick the cotton. But they too illiterate to even know how to pronounce Negus or Negro like the Spanish. Negra. They can't even pronounce their own shit. If you look at the English language, depending on how far away you got from the educational people, your intellect changed. How the fuck can you have an accent? Spain, they don't have no accents in Spain. And when you speak Spanish, one way. German, one way. Swahili, one way. Hi, howdy, howdy do, hello. Because they were all illiterates, but they had one thing in common. They had guns. They're idiots with guns. They're not more intelligent than us. They're not more athletic. They're not more innovative. Nothing. They just have guns and you don't. Educate yourself and stop arguing with your brother. Trying to put your brothers down.